I'm very happy that you've joined us tonight. I'm Marian Ryanson, the Executive Director of Eating for Your Health by Suppers. And a little bit about our organization. At Eating for Your Health, we support people in changing the way they eat and help them to build a healthy relationship with food. We believe that every person and every body is unique and that no single approach to food is right for everyone. So we encourage people to explore and experiment with food choices that reflect their taste, budget, background, and culture, and also what's available to them. We emphasize the importance of eating single, whole, fresh ingredients and avoiding processed foods whenever possible. And we don't advocate one single approach to food or way of eating. We leave that up to you just to decide that what works best for you. Our vision is to continue to provide a non-judgmental environment, encouraging people to eat for their health, whether it's online, in your kitchen, or out in the grocery stores. Tonight, I'm so happy to be hearing from Emma Anderson, who'll be sharing the challenges that she faced with food that led to disordered eating and how she overcame these challenges through an understanding of nutrition. And she's going to share with us how she now has a healthy relationship with food. So welcome and thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much, Marian. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started with my presentation. All right, can everybody see that okay? Perfect. All right, so hey everybody, my name's Emma and this is my food story. So a little bit about me. I'm an undergrad at American University, as some of you may know, and I'm majoring in public health. I'm on the pre-med track, and I'm originally from Denmark, so I'm fully Danish, but when I'm not here in DC for school, I'm in Princeton, New Jersey with my family. And right now I work as an EMT. I've had some sort of job since I was 14 years old. I'm 20 now for some context. And that's kind of made healthy eating, having access to food, complicated at times. For example, like, if you don't have any breaks to eat, like if I would work 7-8 hour shifts and some of my jobs didn't give me breaks, which in hindsight was maybe not the best, but can't do much about it. If you're always on the go and you're only really able to bring food that doesn't need to be refrigerated or things that are really easy to just sort of grab and go, you can't really stand there and make a whole meal. And so outside of school, I really enjoy cooking as well, which just kind of got me into that as well through my jobs. And I sort of through having to make these sort of really quick and easy recipes was sort of what got me started with my cooking, and also creating content, which is another thing that I really enjoy doing. And then I also really enjoy in environmental activism. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. And in high school, I took a lot of environmental science classes. I won my school's environmental science award. Whether that was just because I was the one who did the work in the class or because I'm actually good at it, I don't know. But either way, I got it. So, and a phrase that I like to sort of bring into my everyday life is that small gestures can make a big difference. So growing up, I was lucky enough that I almost always had home-cooked meals, partly because my parents really enjoy cooking and always prioritized nutritious food for us. But it's likely also partly a cultural thing, as it's generally significantly more expensive to go out to eat in Denmark, which is where I was raised and grew up, than it tends to be over here in the U.S. There's definitely a big difference between the two. And this is starting to be less true as Denmark sort of shifts towards a more westernized approach of eating and lifestyle in general. But no matter where you are in the world, it's definitely more budget friendly to make meals at home. And I was also taught to be independent from a very early age, which is also just part of my personality. But so I learned how to cook basic things and do other basic necessary tasks really early on, which means that I find almost a sort of comfort in cooking because it's so familiar and I've had so many ways. I found learned so many ways to do it and I've had so many ways to get into it. And it's just something that I've grown up watching my mom do as well. So I'm going to provide you guys with a few nutrition quick facts. So this is just for a little bit of sort of basic knowledge. You don't have to remember everything that's on here, but it's just nice to have a little bit of context for what it is you're actually doing. So you're not just sort of thrown into the dark with the recipe and you don't really know what's going on in it. So starting off with our macronutrients. So there's 3 main macronutrients, which are your proteins, your fats, and then your carbohydrates. So proteins are necessary for the growth and repair of your muscle mass and tissues. I'm sure you guys have all heard how important protein is. And protein is composed of amino acids. And there's essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. So basically non-essential amino acids just mean that you don't have to get them through your diet. Your body already produces them. And then essential amino acids are the opposite of that. So they're essential because you have to get them through your diet. It's not something that our bodies naturally produce. And there are 9 essential amino acids, which are found in a variety of different foods. And some examples of foods that contain all the essential amino acids, so these are called complete proteins if they have all 9 of those essential amino acids. And these are eggs, fish, quinoa, buckwheat, and many other sources. But they're mainly tend to be animal-derived sources, and then there's a few plant-based like quinoa, buckwheat, and a few different other whole grains and seeds. And then some other sources of protein in general include animal proteins like chicken, you've got your fish, eggs, red meat, and then you also have plant-based sources such as whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds. And all plant foods are going to contain some amount of protein. It just depends on in what sort of amount and how much you would have to eat to actually get a substantial amount. And then next we've got our fats. So they're also known as lipids. So it's a more sort of official term for them. And they're composed of glycerol and fatty acids. And fat allows the body to store energy, to produce certain hormones. They protect your internal organs. And also they allow you to absorb certain vitamins, which are fat soluble. And there are 3 types of fats. And those are your trans fats, saturated fats, and unsaturated fats. So your trans fats are present in things such as hydrogenated oils. Hydrogenated is just a way of processing oils that a lot of companies use for shelf stability and things like that. And this often includes products like margarine, shortenings. And you want to sort of avoid these as much as you can. That's not to say you can never have them, of course, but you want to prioritize your unsaturated fats, then your saturated fats, and then your trans fats as much as possible. The next, you've got your saturated fats, and these have a higher saturation, as the name suggests, of hydrogen molecules. So that's sort of what determines whether fat is saturated or unsaturated, is how many hydrogen molecules are present on that lipid. And so saturated fats are strongly associated with increased levels of LDL, or low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, as well as heart disease. And so it's, again, best to try to keep these to a minimum whenever possible. And they're found primarily in animal products like cream, butter, meat, your poultry with skin, things like that. And a general rule that I sort of like use to remember, and it's just like a little trick if you're unsure of whether something is unsaturated fat or a saturated fat, is that if it's solid at room temperature, it's a saturated fat, whereas if it's liquid, it is unsaturated. And of course, there's a couple of exceptions to this, depending on how some companies might process the oils, but that's a really good general rule you can use. And then lastly, the unsaturated fats. So these are the fats that are not completely saturated with hydrogen molecules, and they're primarily found in plant sources like avocados, nuts, seeds, olives, and any plant oil derived from these nuts, seeds, avocados, and things like that. And these are the ones you want to try to optimize and prioritize in your diet. So cooking with olive oil, cooking with avocado oil, things like that. And then the last category of our macronutrients, we've got our carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are the body's main source of energy, and they're broken down into glucose when we consume them. And so we've got simple carbohydrates as well as complex carbohydrates. And so the simple ones, as they you can gather from the name, are really easy for the body to break down, and they provide you with quick energy. And so these are usually found in sweet things like your honey, sugar, any sort of really sweetener you can think of that's not an artificial sweetener, because those don't break down the body the same way, but that's a whole other thing. But any sort of like honey, sugar, sweetener, as well as in dairy as a byproduct of the fermentation process, and then also, of course, naturally in fruit as well. But something to keep in mind if you are thinking about fruit is that fruit also contains lots of fiber, which helps slow down the processing of the carbohydrates. So, for example, if I have a few pieces of fruit as a snack versus having like some candy as a snack, I'm much more likely to have a higher peak of energy faster with the candy because it goes through your body quicker. But then you are more likely to have it last you not as long and have sort of that crash from that. Whereas if you have this fruit or something with a little bit more fiber, you're more likely to have more longer sustained energy. And so it might not take in quite as quickly, but it'll last you a little bit longer, and you won't feel as big of a difference when you start to be done processing those carbohydrates. And so again, both of these are great. It just depends on what you're really going for. And it's a really helpful thing to keep in mind when you're deciding what to eat when. sort of like if you're running and you need those gels, you need that energy quickly. You don't really want the fiber because you don't want your body to have to process it. So that can be really helpful to keep in mind as well. And then your complex carbohydrates. So these are a little bit more complex and they take longer for the body to break down, which provides that slower release of energy. And so these things are typically found in things like bread, pasta, as long as they're, say, whole grain and they have actually, you can tell by the color as well as if they have actually the whole kernels in them. And then they're also found in starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, carrots, squash, things like that. And fiber is also a type of carbohydrate, which is why it's present in such abundance in so many complex carbohydrates. And then moving on, we've got our micronutrients. So this is sort of the other category of our nutrients. So these are vitamins and minerals that are necessary for the proper function of our bodily system. And they're called micro instead of macro because we don't need them in very large amounts. But despite this, we still have to make sure that we get them in those adequate amounts because they're crucial for our cellular function. And so they're not produced by our body, so we have to obtain them through eating a well-varied and also a whole foods-focused diet, the exception, of course, being vitamin D, which you can get from the sun. And so these are vitamins and minerals, and so whole plant foods as well as animal foods contain varying micronutrients in various amounts. And generally speaking, if you're somebody who's eating a well-rounded diet and you're eating an adequate amount of food, then your nutrient deficiencies are unlikely. An exception, like a case in which there might be an exception for this is, for example, for myself, I'm vegan. And so something that I made sure to research before I went vegan, even if you're vegetarian, you want to make sure you research if there's anything that you might have a possible deficiency in or anything that's a little bit harder to get through your diet if you are cutting out certain food groups like animal products, for example. And so for me as a vegan, it's really important that I supplement B12, vitamin K, and iodine. There's a couple more, but those are just some basics that you want to keep in mind because those are animal derived. And so I wouldn't be getting those. So I make sure I get those through a multivitamin. And so our vitamins can be either fat or water soluble, which also impacts the amount that you need and or the amount that your body can tolerate of it. And so because water soluble vitamins are soluble in water, if there's an excess of them that you ingest, they're just going to be broken down by the body and excreted. However, with your fat soluble vitamins, these are not dissolved and excreted because they're not as easily broken down. And so if you consume an excess of them, they may cause health problems. And so it's really important that if you are supplementing vitamins that are fat soluble and not water soluble, that you just keep an eye on how much you're ingesting and what the dosage is of that vitamin. And so your fat soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E, and K. And then all your water soluble vitamins are pretty much every other vitamin. So all your vitamins C's and B's, which there are lots of different varieties of. So I find it a lot easier to just focus on which ones are fat soluble rather than trying to remember them all. And then your minerals are iron, calcium, zinc, magnesium. These are also really important for optimal functioning, and you can get these through your food as well. But again, ensuring that you are getting them in an adequate amount. It's always good to supplement when needed.
I'm going to pause just 1 second. One thing I didn't mention is if anybody has any questions at all, please feel free to put your questions in the chat or raise your hand or yell out. And maybe not yell out, but when we'll be happy to answer them if the pause makes sense. But we will have time at the end for Q&A.
Yes, and like Marianne said, I'm also more than happy to answer them if they're pertinent to the slide in the moment. So just go ahead and ask them whenever you'd like. So moving into my wellness journey, a little bit more about me. As I got older, I started getting more and more into health and wellness, and I started cooking my own meals, which was really great, and I absolutely love it. But I also slowly started to become more than just healthy eating. And so what I thought was just me being healthy was actually a disordered eating behavior and the start of a really long journey with orthorexia, which is a type of eating disorder that is not often discussed and is sort of a subcategory of many of the larger, more well-known ones. And along with this, I also developed some body image issues and other things that come, just hardships that come along with having a mental illness disorder like that. And so I developed certain fear foods. I would avoid situations in which I couldn't control things. Like, for example, I might say no to plans with friends or making sure that plans were only so long so that I wouldn't have to eat out, or I could eat in between or before. And overall just became really miserable with my body, my mental health, and myself. And I'm sort of unsure about what started all of it. I'm sure it's a mix of many factors. There's never just one thing when it comes to things like this. But I think some things that may have played a role include societal pressure. That it's a really big thing, especially in today's society. Pressure for myself, because I tend to be really hard on myself. And then also some significant life changes and shifts as this started pretty much when I started high school. So that transition from middle school to high school, depending on the person, for some people that's really easy, but for some people, including myself, that was not an easy transition. And maybe it was just the kind of person that I am to begin with. I'm a really type A, uptight person, so that's not really conducive to avoiding things like this. And I'm not telling you all this to make you feel bad for me or to deter anyone at all from living their best life, but I'm just telling you to show you that everyone has their own struggles, and that being healthy doesn't mean the same thing for everybody, and for no one doesn't mean restricting yourself or depriving yourself of experience or time with your friends, or doing the opposite to your health of what you actually intend to do. And so it's been about 6 years now, give or take, since the beginning of my health journey, if you will. And I'm just now starting to realize what health truly means, which is a balance of nutrient-dense food, but also fun foods, and knowing that it's more than okay to eat what you want, when you want, and until you're satiated and satisfied, and just being able to enjoy life and being able to spend time with your friends and family and not having to worry about the little things like what you're going to eat next, when really there's much, much more important things like who you're spending time with and how you're spending that time. And so next I want to move into a couple little recipes. I call these recipes for success, and these are just some of my personal favorites. They're super quick and easy. So the first one I'm going to show you are my overnight oats, and these are my go-to overnight oats I eat them pretty much every single day. They're super easy if you're on the go, or even if you just can't be bothered to cook anything in the morning, really.
And then if you made it the night before or whenever you made it, just go ahead and place it into a bowl or use it in the bowl you already had it in, and then top it with whatever you would like. So I went for some frozen blueberries, some fresh red currants, just because that's what I had on hand, and then also some peanut butter. And as you can see, they're super thick and creamy, and I really like mine this consistency, but you can always add more or less liquid to get it to the consistency that you would like. So yeah, I hope you enjoy.
And what you missed in the beginning with that was just me going through everything I'm putting in it. And I'm more than happy to share these videos with you guys after as well. But they're pretty much just the oats and then the flaxseed meal and some other basic things that I sort of like to use as my base for all my recipes. And then some little pro tips that I have for you guys. One of my favorite ways to make them is adding a tablespoon of cacao and a tablespoon of sweetener to make it chocolate flavored. I love anything chocolate flavored. And then also frozen blueberries and lemon zest is really good as well. And it's all in the toppings, really. You can throw anything like you really want on there. So you can do chocolate chips, peanut butter, fruit, literally anything you want. It always turns out good. Oh, I'm glad, Lula. I hope it does convert you to oats, because it's the best way to make them. I'm just saying.
It is. It's the healthiest way to make them.
Exactly. And it's so good. And you can even make them the morning of, honestly, if you get the night before. All it needs is just a couple hours in the fridge, and then you're good to go. And then next, I'm showing you guys my avocado toast. So I know this is more of an assembly rather than a recipe, but this is something that I think is really super quick and easy to make whenever you really don't know what to make. And it's got your balance of protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And to make it more of a complete meal, I added in here just a little tip. You can add some pan-fried eggs on top if that's your thing, or some tofu, or you can even mash some beans in with the avocado. That's also a really good way to up the protein and just make it a little bit more satisfying.
Hi friends, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make a super easy meal or snack idea, which is avocado toast. So you're just going to go ahead and grab toast of your choosing. I'm using some sourdough here that I just kept in the freezer, and I'm just going to go ahead and thaw/toast that in my toaster oven. And then you're just going to grab some avocado. It's still good if it's a little brown on top, that's just some oxidation. Don't mind that. And then I'm getting a little fancy with my toast here and toasting it up in a pan with some avocado oil, but you can totally just do it in the toaster if that's what you prefer and if you're a little bit shorter on time. And then to the toasted bread, I'm just going to go ahead and add my mashed avocado as well as some seasonings of choice. So I went for some red pepper flakes, some nutritional yeast, as well as some lemon pepper. And that's it. And you can add anything you want on top of this and enjoy.
All right, so those are my two little quick and easy recipes. And don't need to play it again. And then for where to find me, you can find me on Instagram, Emma Zen. I have a lot more recipes on there as well. And then also through email. But if you guys are interested in more of the recipe aspect, then my Instagram would be the place to go. And that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Emma. This is really helpful to just, understand what you went through and sharing so that people who, when they're feeling things, they can know that you can process through things and come out to the other side and really be healthy. And it's a process, right? I mean, it's not something that happens overnight. Sure. It's, so much of when we are shifting from like disorder to order or disease to feeling, the wellness, and dis-ease meaning just not feeling right. It doesn't mean you have a disease. It can mean just not feeling right.
Exactly.
It's a process. And please, if anybody has any questions, please, let's see, there's something in the chat. Viola said you might convert her to toast. So yeah, nice whole grain toast and some avocado, a little bit of olive oil, and you can just, add some other vegetables if you want, or some nuts and seeds. So does anybody have any any questions for Emma? Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. And very nice.
Thank you, Jody. I really appreciate that.
And if it's okay with you, Emma, I'd love to put those videos on our YouTube channel and share them.
Of course.
Let people know that it's easy to make some quick, healthy meals and foods. Where do you eat out in DC that's plant-based? Question.
Oh, that's a good question. That's actually one of the things I loved about DC, moving here, and I think any big city in general, but some of my favorite places, these might be kind of, I don't know, if you've heard of them before, then I'm sorry. But some of my favorite places are Cava and Chopped and Sweet Green. They also tend to be pretty universally available. And they're just really nice because you can build anything you need. So for any sort of like dietary restrictions or anything like that, it's super easy to make whatever you want. And there's also a place, I don't know if they have one in DC, but they have one here in Maryland called True Food Kitchen. And they have some really, really good plant-based options as well that are really good. It's more of like it's less of a takeout, more of a sit-down restaurant, but they do takeout, and it's really good too.
I've heard that we might be getting one of those close to here in Princeton. Let's see.
Oh, New Vegan is good too. Yeah, that one is really good. Also, Hip City Veg. They have a lot of places as well.
Okay. Which part of your journey are you most proud of?
What part of my journey am I most proud of? That's a good question. I think probably coming to the realization that I actually had an eating disorder and actually opening up to people about it, because that was something that I was definitely in denial of for a long time. And I think it's something that's super stigmatized in general. Even in school, we don't really ever talk about it. Like, nobody talks about it, like in our health classes, even though it's such an extremely common thing. Even a lot of my friends have struggled with eating disorders. And so I think that was probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, is actually being able to talk to people about it. And hopefully through sharing my story, knowing and informing people that they're not alone and that it's okay to talk about. It's more than okay, and you should talk about it when you feel ready for it, of course. So yeah, I think that's probably what it is. And being able to just openly talk about it and share about it now.
Murray asked, are there any counseling services for individuals with eating disorders in the DC area or on the American University campus?
So yes, I'm at American University, and I'm not sure of any specific services in DC. I have looked into, I do know there are counselors. There's many counselors around DC. But at AU, we have just like you can go to free counseling, and they actually do have people that specialize in eating disorders. And there is, I'm blanking on the name now, but there's a clinic in downtown DC they have a bunch of different counselors, and you can choose actually online what you want them to specialize in, including eating disorders. So if you look up like DC counseling, I'm pretty sure it'll come up. That's what I looked up. And you can choose sort of your area of interest and what you want them to help you with the most.
So I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Ioria. As a mom, and this will be helpful for everybody, as a mom of a 20-year-old daughter who seems to have a disordered eating, limits her diet, over-exercises, what tips or advice can you share to talk with her about eating more? She's careful how she approaches her because she gets very defensive.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I know that I definitely also get very defensive about it. And so I would first of all say, know that it's not you. It's really the person, your daughter in this case, or whoever it is. It's something that's really hard to talk about. And when people approach you when you're not ready, it's super easy to get defensive really quickly. And so I think you even attending this and, being aware of it and knowing that you have to sort of approach her in a certain way is already a really great first step. And I think that a way in which you can sort of be there for her, but not push anything on her, which is to be supportive of everything she says. Like if she comes to you for advice or if she opens up to you, to just really listen and try not to sort of insert yourself too much into the situation unless of course, if she asks for your advice, then it's more than okay too. But I think for me, at least something that can also be really not necessarily harmful, but also just like overwhelming in a way is if people try to give their advice, or also when people make comments about themselves or their food, which I know it's not always something we're conscious of, especially if you're not somebody who struggles with disordered eating. But for people with eating disorders, or I'll speak for myself at least, but I think for a lot of people, it is really hard to hear comments about your food and not sort of pass that judgment onto yourself. Like if you're commenting on how much you're eating or the way you look or things like that, that can really negatively impact your daughter potentially and how she views herself and what she's eating or how she looks and things like that. So I think mainly just being aware of what sort of commentary you're making, ensuring her that you're always there for her if she needs anything, and also trying to avoid commenting on her food, even if it might look like it's not enough, or even if she seems like she's over exercising, just sort of avoiding any comment that could pass any judgment onto what she's doing in a way.
Good advice for a lot of things. So it's hard when it's somebody that you care about, that you're worried about, right? So
exactly, yeah.
Let's see. There's more awareness now regarding mental health issues. Are eating disorders still considered stigmatized?
I definitely agree that there is a lot more awareness now regarding mental health issues in general, and I think that people are starting to be a lot more open about it. But I 100% still think they're stigmatized. I mean, even if I'm in class, for example, or if I'm talking about it with some of my friends, you can kind of tell people in the surrounding room get a little bit uncomfortable, or people don't really know how to talk about it. And I think that's just because it is such a touchy subject, if you will. And it's something that not a lot of people want to necessarily confront, even if they know that it's a problem. So I think they are still stigmatized to a certain extent. I think also, though, we have grown a little bit in how we teach it. Like I know in some of my classes, at least my professors are trying to show some videos about it and, trying to say if you need help and sort of providing resources for people. But it's definitely still a little bit of a barrier between actually learning about it and talking about it and sort of what people can share and can't share, or what people are comfortable with. So.
I know I'm seeing a lot more in the media and in advertising that shows people that look more like people I know. And,
Right.
and not this glorified picture of what somebody might look like. And a lot of them don't even look like that anyway.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah. But I think, bringing things, shedding light on things always helps to be talking about it and figuring things out and getting different perspectives. But that non-judgmental piece is something that we know works so well when people are learning, because when you're feeling judged, that's what you think about. You think about what you shouldn't be doing more than what
Right.
you might want to try or might want to explore.
Right.
So that's something that we just try and instill with everybody, and also in judging themselves. Like, we're all human and we all are dealing with whatever we have been bringing along with us, and hopefully can move through. But are there any other questions? It doesn't look like there are. But thank you so much, Emma, for sharing your story and sharing your experience and providing us with these delicious and nutrient dense recipes that we'll share with everyone. And we will have a recording of this available in a couple of weeks when it's when it's edited. And like I said, we will definitely be posting those little videos on our website. But thank you for coming. We hope to see you at some of our upcoming programs. We have many things that are scheduled over the next couple of weeks. We have a program with Dr. Uma Pishrati, who's going to be talking about children's health. She's a pediatric gastroenterologist who just talks about metabolic syndrome and what to be aware of and how to be healthier. And then in May, we have a month-long program on thriving and being successful, living successfully with diabetes, learning different aspects of finding your strengths, which I think we can be building into almost every program that we have. Understanding your food, understanding your medication, the importance of meaningful movement, and the importance of attitude. Attitude is the one thing that we all have control over in our lives. So I wish you all a good night. Thank you again, Emma. I wish everybody a nice positive attitude on wherever you can find it. And we look forward. Oh, we also have a garden program coming, and we're hopefully going to be in person again soon. So for those of you who are local, we hope to see you in person. And for those who are not, we hope to continue to see you on these little screens. But thank you again. And we hope to see you soon, and be well, eat well, and plant something. Good night, everybody.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you. Have a good night.